Hello all. So I need to change the radiator out on this 2006 Kia Spectra, and so I thought I'd do a video on it and show how I do it, and hopefully it helps somebody out if you have this problem. And the main problem I'm having with this one is you can see right inside of here, it's leaking right along here. There's like a seam, and it comes out once it gets hot. At first I thought it was a radiator cap, but it's not. It's a seam right here. It gets really hot, it starts bubbling out, and you can see where it's been blown out all over the engine here. And you can pick these up at a auto parts store. I went to AutoZone and they wanted I think it was like $177, almost $180 for it. But so I ordered mine off of Amazon. Came in today, and I got mine for $60. So if you have enough time to wait for it to come in the mail, it's a lot more cheaper. And I'll put all the links inside the description for what I'm using. But anyways, this is it right here. I'm gonna go and get started. The first step is to drain it, and they got a drain plug right underneath here. You're gonna have to jack it up. I got it up on a stand, but right here, hopefully you can see that. Yours might be a bolt. It might be like this, where it's just got a, or just this one's just a Phillips. I'm just gonna unscrew it, and I got this pan here to capture it. And I'm just gonna pop it out, and I'm gonna let that drain. I need to pop the top cap off. Alright, so I popped the top radiator cap off, and as you can see, I'm just gonna let it drain out. And once it's drained, I'll be right back. Alright, so I got done draining all the fluid out of it, and we're just gonna start popping these hoses off. So, you know, this, we gotta pop this off. Where the overfill is, goes to the overfill. And we gotta pop this off. I'm gonna need two hands, I think, to do this. So I'm gonna be right back. All right, so I got the top hose off. You know, it's real easy to squeeze the clamp together, and push it off. And this one right here, it's located again, hopefully you can see that. Let me see here. This is going to the bottom, and it's too difficult to get to at the bottom, so it's better to pull it off up here. So, and just pull it out when you bring it out, because it's down there. If you can't get it out at the bottom, you want to play with it, then it's not going to really matter. But you have to climb underneath, and that frame's right in the way. So it's easier for me to pull it off up here, so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do that next. All right, so that hose is off. Both hoses are off. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull these wires to the fan off. They just push in here and pull out. Sometimes they come out easy, sometimes they're a little more difficult. Either way, they need to come apart. So those are off. And we also got some lines going down to our coolant lines, but we can get those once we get the fan off, which is next. If you notice over here, it's got the AC system is hooked as a mounting bracket too here. Don't unscrew or play with the AC lines. It's just mounted to it, which will come apart as we take the bolts off the radiator. So don't play with this right here. Just stay away from that. But next I'm gonna take this, which is like 10 millimeter, and here I'm gonna go and take these bolts off, and I'm gonna go ahead and work on getting this fan out. Okay, so I popped, there was 3 bolts on these fans. There was 2 on the outside and 1 in the middle. So 1, 2, and 3, and they're all loose now. Some of these hoses are wire tied to it, so I'm gonna have to break that loose. And This right here looks like it just pops out. You just pop this out and set it to the side. I need 2 hands to do that, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and finish taking these little wires off that I need to. You can see they're just clipped in there. I'm just going to break those loose, that loose, and this wire tie here, and any other possible ones I might see. It looks like there's another one down there. So that's where I'm at. I'll be right back. Okay, and the next step is to break loose these automatic transmission lines. You got 2 of them. You got one here and one over here. So basically you want to take these clamps off again, and you'll have 2 of them. You can also break them loose up here if you follow the hoses up, whichever is easier. You know, every vehicle is going to age differently. So if you look up here, you could take them off up here, which might be, hopefully you can see that. It's hard to get in there. I'm not sure if you can see that, but if you follow your lines up, it might be easier to take them off here, put them on the radiator. When you put it back in, clamp them back up there. Whichever is easiest. I'm going to go ahead and see what's easiest for me, and I'll be right back. Okay, so for me, it was easier just to break them loose right here at the bottom. As you can see there, here's the hoses. I stuck them up in the air so they wouldn't drain, because they'll drain fluid out if you leave them pointed down. But if you pick them up, they shouldn't drain. But that's what I did there. And so the next step is we got 10 millimeter that's holding the radiator in. So we got 1, 2, and there should be 2 over here, which is like right here. And you're gonna have 1 more way down here, right there. So those are the next step, is to point those out one more time. We got 1, 2 over here. Gonna have 1 up here. Hopefully you can see that in the sun, I can't tell. And 1 down here, which are 10 millimeter bolts. And so I'm gonna go and break those loose. Okay, so I got those 4 bolts out. 1, 2 there, 1 there, and another 1 here. Next step is to pop these out right here. They're just a 12 millimeter on these. They just like cap onto it right there. You can take these off. Let's see if I can do that. They just pop out. Okay, so once those are out, I believe that's it. Let me see if should be about ready to come straight out now. So, not sure if I could do this with 1 hand. Alright, just gotta wiggle it out there. Then set it down. And there it is out of there. Go and give you a shot of what it looks like in there with it out. This condenser is right here. It bolts in with it, so be careful with that. It's for the air conditioner. And what you want to do is you want to match these. So what we want to do is we want to match these up and make sure they match. And put any parts over here that you need to. Make sure these are tight. Sometimes they already come tight usually, but you never know. So make sure those are tight before putting it back in. You don't want no automatic transmission leaks. And there's a nice little drain plug on that one. It's got to turn with your hand. You ever have to do this again. But that looks exactly like the old one. So I'm gonna go ahead, pop this hose on here, and go ahead and start putting it back together. I'll be right back. Okay, so I swapped out the lower hose on there, put the clamp on. These were a little loose, so be sure to tighten them up if yours are. Just double check. You don't want to get them in there and they be loose and you got a leak under there. So next step, pop it in. Okay, so I got it in there, and the first thing I do is I just pop in this right bolt to hold it to the condenser, because it's tied to this condenser, which is for the cooling for the air conditioner. So I just pop in that bolt, and you're gonna have to look underneath, and it just got right here and right over here, two spots. These little things need to go into them. So it's no big deal. Got one over here. They just pop in there. So just move them around. And till it goes in there. And there's that side. And there's that side. So I got those in. And the next step, is I'm just going to pop in these other 4 or 3 bolts. Okay, so I got the bolts in. You don't want to crank on them real hard. So you got these little tabs, you know, they don't need to be real tight, but you know, just get them in there snug. That's about all I'm going to go with. Looks good on that one. But I got them in there, it's snug in there, got them all tightened down. And so pop these back in. Get them centered on there. Alright, so I got that back on, got it in there. They're not real hard, but you can feel them when they get centered. Just get them centered in there and tighten it down. Use a 12 millimeter. So that's in there, that's in there. And so the next step, I'm gonna go ahead and put those hoses back on. Okay, so there's those hoses for the transmission. Transmission cooler lines, they're back on there. Sure, they're on there good. Okay, so now's the time to go ahead and put the fans back in. And remember, we took them out, put them down the same way we took them out. So I'm going to go ahead and slide these in. They got little hooks on the bottom that hook in. And hopefully you can see them down there. Go ahead and point them out. These little hooks. So go ahead and push this one in. And then put this one in. Alright, this other one's going to take 2 hands. I can see that already. But you get the idea. I'm just going to, I put that one in. I'm going to put this one in next. Okay, so I got the fans in. I went and put the bolts back in. Remember, there's 1, 2, and 3 bolts. Here's looking at it from the farther back. You'll see them. They're pretty simple. Just 3 bolts on the top holding them in. The bottom just has those little hooks. Be sure to plug back in your wires for your fans so they could turn on. And the next step is to plug in these hoses. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, so that's in. I got everything in. I got the hoses back on. Okay, so I got those radiator hoses on. Pretty simple, pretty easy to do. I also hooked up the overflow for the little overflow water tank. But this is pretty simple to do. You just need a 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter, and a pair of pliers, really. And you really don't even have to jack it up if you don't want to. It's pretty tight under there to drain it. But in all actuality, you can pretty much do it just from the top here. The last step is to go ahead and put radiator fluid in it. It's you're supposed to mix it 50-50. You can reuse your old fluid if it looks good enough. This does not look good enough, so I'm gonna be putting some new fluid in. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in some fluid and start it up. All right, so I'm back, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty easy to do. After it warms up one time, you might get a little bit of water. It goes past the thermostat, so you might need to fill up your overflow. After you drive it around 5-10 minutes, you might want to check it just to be sure. But that's pretty much it. And how to change out a radiator on this 2006 Kia Spectra.